Melissa Reeves had learned to count to 10 before ever daring to face her reflection in a mirror. It had become a routine, a coping mechanism during her recovery process. 7 months, 18 surgeries, and 300 hours of physical therapy after being rescued from a burning Humvee in the Afghan mountains, she was still bracing herself for the moment of confrontation with her altered face. On that April morning, as she straightened the collar of her olive green blouse chosen for dinner, the numbers came out of her mouth without thought. 1, 2, 3. Upon reaching 10, she finally lifted her gaze. To the left, the same familiar features, a pair of determined blue eyes, high cheekbones, and a hint of the beauty that had been admired in her youth back in Columbus, Ohio. To the right, a jagged network of scar tissue stretched from her temple to her chin, blending into her neck in deep red patches hidden beneath the blouse's collar. She whispered to her reflection, "Captain Reeves, 35th Engineer Battalion, decorated with the Purple Heart and Bronze Star, don't forget that." Blue Water had opened its doors while she was still recovering at Walter Reed Hospital. Known as the finest dining establishment in Alexandria, Virginia, it had become a favorite among politicians, lobbyists, and the city's elite. Melissa had passed it countless times during her rehabilitation walks, admiring the elegant building with its cool, bluish windows and understated golden sign. After 3 years of isolation, spent mostly with family and former battalion members, Melissa decided the time had come to step out. The taxi dropped her off right on time, precisely at 7. For a brief moment, her hand lingered on the car door handle, hesitation lingering in the air. She took a deep breath and met the driver's gaze in the rearview mirror. "How much do I owe you?" "For you?" "Nothing," replied the middle-aged man, turning to face her directly. "My son is in the 82nd Airborne Regiment. I can recognize a former military woman when I see one." "Thank you for your service." She didn't correct his use of former. Some civilians never truly understood that ex-military personnel remained military, just in another phase. But she appreciated the compliment. She smiled in thanks and stepped out, adjusting the bag on her shoulder. The driver waited until she entered the restaurant before leaving. The interior was exactly as she had imagined, soft lighting, pristine white tablecloths, and crystal glasses catching the light, casting little rainbows. The maitre d', an elegant man with an affected French accent, greeted her with a professional smile that faltered for a split second when she turned her face. "Good evening." "A table for one, please," Melissa said, keeping her voice firm. "Certainly." "Do you have a reservation?" he asked, unnecessarily consulting the digital list in front of him. "No, but I see there are available tables." After a barely noticeable hesitation, the man nodded. "This way, please." He led her through the main dining room, passing several empty tables with prime locations, until they reached a more secluded area near the kitchen entrance. Melissa noticed the stares. She always did. Some were discreet, others openly curious or uncomfortable. A middle-aged couple at a central table paused their conversation to watch her pass, the woman leaning in to whisper something to her husband. "Is this table acceptable?" the maitre d' asked, indicating a seat in the corner. Melissa nodded and sat down. A young waiter in his early 20s approached with water and a menu. Unlike the maitre d', his gaze was direct, and his smile genuine. "Good evening. My name is Cameron, and I'll be your waiter. Are you familiar with our establishment?" "This is my first time." "Then welcome. May I recommend we start with our," he said, and his voice was warm and relaxed. "It's spectacular." Melissa relaxed a bit. "Sounds great. And a Manhattan to go with it, please." Cameron nodded and stepped away. Melissa surveyed the room, allowing herself to absorb the sense of normalcy. It was something she had forgotten, what it felt like to be in a public place without the protective, understanding looks of friends or family. The discomfort that once consumed her had faded over time, replaced by calm determination. 3 years earlier, she had commanded an engineering unit responsible for rebuilding infrastructure in Afghan villages. Now, her greatest challenge was rebuilding her own life. The Manhattan arrived. Perfect, she said. The beet carpaccio was indeed spectacular. Cameron spoke about the menu with genuine enthusiasm, recommending the duck with cherry sauce as the main course. Excellent choice, he concluded, collecting the menu. While waiting for the main dish, Melissa noticed the couple from the central table again. The woman, elegant in a black dress that likely cost more than 3 months of Melissa's pay, continued to watch her, her expression flickering between disgust and pity. The man in a suit was now talking on the phone, occasionally glancing her way. Melissa forced herself to look away. She wouldn't let them ruin her evening. The restaurant manager, a man in his 40s with impeccably styled hair and a navy suit, approached about 15 minutes later. His professional smile didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Reeves, may I have a word?" Melissa set down her fork. "Yes?" "I would like to inform you that we have an unexpected private event tonight. We are rearranging our guests. There is a car waiting to take you to our sister establishment 10 minutes from here, where you will be greeted with full courtesy and your dinner will be on us." She looked around. Several tables remained occupied. "Private event?" The manager cleared his throat. "It's a last-minute situation. We are only reallocating a few selected tables." "A few tables?" Melissa repeated. "What criteria are you using to select those tables?" The man averted his eyes, adjusting his tie. "They are internal operational matters, Mississippi." At that moment, Cameron approached with the main course. Noticing the conversation, he hesitated. The manager gave him a stern look. "Cameron, I have already explained tonight's event to Miss Reeves. Please pack her order to go." The young waiter didn't move. His eyes alternated between the manager and Melissa. "Sir, we didn't receive any notification about a private event tonight." The manager narrowed his eyes. "That was a recent decision. Now, please do as I asked." Cameron placed Melissa's dish on the table. Then, in a movement feigning clumsiness, he let his phone fall onto the table, the screen facing up. A group chat among the waiters was visible. The restaurant owner ordered the removal of the guest at table 17. "It seems her appearance is bothering the senator and his wife at table 15. This is absurd. It seems like she's a military veteran. Who does he think she is? That woman probably got injured while serving the country." Peterson said to be discreet and offer transportation to Harborside. "I refuse to be a part of this. It's inhumane." Melissa felt heat rise from her neck to her face. She looked at the manager, then at the senator at table 15, who was now openly watching the scene, and back at the phone. "This isn't right," Cameron said softly. "Miss Reeves," continued the manager, his voice now firmer, "we have other guests to consider and—" "Other guests?" Melissa interrupted, her calm voice in stark contrast to the storm brewing inside her. "I understand perfectly." She stood up, placing her napkin on the table. The calm she felt surprised even herself. It was the same calm she had experienced in Kandahar when her unit was under attack, a moment of absolute clarity. "I don't need a ride," she said, grabbing her purse. "And I don't want to take my dinner to go." Then she realized it wasn't just the couple watching her. The entire restaurant had fallen silent, with dozens of eyes fixed on the scene. From a nearby table, someone was discreetly filming with a cell phone. Cameron stepped forward. "I quit." The manager blinked, confused. "What?" "You heard me," the young man replied, removing his apron. "I quit. I'm not going to work in a place that treats people like this." "Cameron, don't be ridiculous. She's just—" "Captain Melissa Reeves," Cameron interrupted. 35th Army Engineer Battalion, decorated with the Purple Heart and Bronze Star for rescuing civilians under enemy fire. The restaurant remained in a deathly silence. Melissa felt a lump in her throat, but she held her ground. "Thank you, Cameron, but you don't need to lose your job because of me." "I'm not losing anything worth keeping," he replied. Melissa nodded and walked toward the exit. As she passed the senator's table, she slowed her pace. The woman looked away, and the senator pretended to consult the menu. "I hope you enjoy your dinner," Melissa said calmly. "Some people die so you can sit here and worry about things as important as the unwanted sight of a face like mine." The senator paled slightly but kept his eyes fixed on the menu. Melissa stepped out into the cool April night, her heart pounding despite the outward calm. She didn't call a taxi. She preferred to walk, letting the cold air dry the tears she finally allowed to fall. The next morning, the video of the incident had already gone viral. Melissa found out when her phone started ringing incessantly. The first call was from Jake Torres, a former sergeant who had served under her command. "I just saw the video," he said, his voice tense. "Those bastards." "Jake, it's okay," she replied, though she wasn't okay. "No, it's not. Listen, we called every veteran in the area. We're going to do something about this. I don't want any trouble." "Trouble? Melissa, you jumped into a burning Humvee to save our men. This isn't a battle you're going to fight alone." Within hours, major national news networks were airing the video. Hashtags like #CowardlySenator and #BlueWaterShane dominated social media. Investigative journalists quickly discovered that Senator Carson had voted against 3 bills to expand health benefits for wounded veterans, while publicly praising the armed forces in his speeches. Around noon, Senator Carson's office issued a statement saying there had been a misunderstanding and that the senator unconditionally supports our heroic veterans. The statement was met with a wave of skepticism and outrage. Several veterans' rights organizations demanded a personal apology. 12 hours later, the video had been viewed over 5 million times. Blue Water issued an official statement apologizing for the misunderstanding and offering a special dinner for veterans. The restaurant began receiving mass cancellations. Its online reviews plummeted to 1 star with hundreds of outraged comments. The senator, pressured by advisors and panicked by collapsing polls, tried to contact Melissa for a private conversation. She refused. The restaurant owner publicly fired manager Peterson, calling his actions completely contrary to the company's values. No one believed in the sudden change of stance. At 7 in the evening on Saturday, dozens of vehicles began arriving in Blue Water's parking lot. Veterans of all ages, many in full formal uniforms, others with their medals over civilian clothes, some in wheelchairs, others with visible prostheses. They brought folding tables, chairs, white tablecloths, candles, and food. Within an hour, the restaurant's parking lot had transformed into an impromptu banquet. TV networks set up mobile units to broadcast the event live. On social media, people across the country expressed their support by sharing photos of veteran relatives with the #RScars. Melissa arrived with Jake and was stunned to see the crowd. A path opened between the veterans. "What is this?" she asked, bewildered. "An honor dinner," Jake replied. "We thought you deserved a proper meal." At the center of the parking lot, a more elaborate table had been set. A simple sign read, "In honor of Captain Melissa Reeves and all those who bear visible and invisible scars for our country." The press arrived soon after. The restaurant owner stepped out to assess the situation, trying to position himself strategically for the cameras but was politely removed from the frame by the veterans. Guests arriving for dinner had to pass through a gauntlet of honor, a line of men and women standing in silence, many with visible scars, who simply watched as they entered. Most of the guests turned back, but some stayed and joined the impromptu dinner in the parking lot. The restaurant, usually packed on Saturday nights, was nearly empty. A helicopter hovered over the parking lot, while a reporter announced that Senator Carson had canceled his appearance at a fundraising event that night, citing a family emergency. Aerial shots revealed his Georgetown mansion with the lights off, while a group of protesters stood on the sidewalk holding signs. Cameron appeared an hour later, carrying a bottle of champagne he had borrowed before leaving. He was greeted with applause. "I think I need a new job," he said to Melissa with a smile. "I think I can help with that," she replied. At midnight, the impromptu celebration was still going strong. Melissa, seated among comrades who truly understood what it meant to bear visible and invisible scars, felt something she hadn't felt since before the accident, belonging and purpose. It was Cameron who suggested, in the early hours of the morning, we should make this a tradition, not just a protest, but something permanent. The idea began to grow in the following days. A week later, Melissa sat in her small room with Jake and 5 other veterans, including Sarah Wilkins, a former military doctor who had lost her left leg in Iraq. "We need a name," said Sarah, "something that goes beyond the incident." "Honored Scars Dinner," Melissa suggested after a moment. "Because it's not just about me or that night. It's about all of us and what we carry." The following Monday, Senator Carson's office announced that he was taking a leave for health treatment. Internal sources revealed that his party had forced the senator to step away temporarily to contain the damage. Blue Water's spokesperson announced that the restaurant would remain closed for a week for staff sensitivity training. Within 2 weeks, the incident had sparked a national debate about the treatment of wounded veterans and political hypocrisy. 3 major restaurant chains announced new hiring policies favoring veterans. An advertising agency offered to create a free campaign for any initiative Melissa wished to promote. 3 months later, the first official Honored Scars dinner was held, not in Blue Water's parking lot, but in a nearby park. 500 veterans attended. They raised nearly $100,000 for reconstructive surgeries for ex-military personnel who didn't have adequate government coverage. Senator Carson, still struggling to recover his reputation, attempted to make a donation, but it was politely declined. Blue Water permanently closed 6 months after the incident. In the second year, the number of participants doubled. A foundation was officially created, with Melissa as the executive director. Cameron, now a business student using the GI Bill, became the first paid employee. The senator did not run for re-election, citing a desire to spend more time with his family. In the 3rd year, they achieved the impossible, transforming the old Blue Water building into a psychological support clinic for veterans. 3 entrepreneurs joined forces to buy the property and donate it to the foundation. That 3rd year, they raised $1.2 million. 78 veterans received life-changing surgeries. It was at that dinner that Melissa met David Hughes, a plastic surgeon specializing in facial reconstruction, who had volunteered to perform procedures pro bono. In the following weeks, they met to discuss cases, then for coffee, and eventually for dinners that had nothing to do with the foundation. One autumn night, seated on a park bench watching the Potomac River, David gently touched the right side of Melissa's face. "You know what I see when I look at you?" he asked. "What?" "Courage, in its purest form." Melissa allowed him to kiss her, and then something inside her, a wall she hadn't realized she had built, began to crumble. A year later, at the 4th Honored Scars dinner, she took the stage in the same parking lot where it had all begun. A crowd of nearly 2,000 veterans and supporters applauded her. "The deepest scars aren't the ones you can see," she began, the words that had become her mantra. "When I was forced out of that restaurant, I thought I was living one of the most humiliating moments of my life. Now I know it was one of the most important." She paused, looking at Cameron, who was at the edge of the stage, and at David in the front row. Somehow, that humiliating night had transformed into the catalyst that reshaped her life. This year, our foundation will help more than 100 veterans obtain surgeries that official systems deem cosmetic, but which are essential for their reintegration. Because we know that healing begins when we recognize ourselves in the mirror. After she stepped down, she went over to the table where Cameron was talking with a few new recruits who had learned about the foundation through social media. "You know what I still don't understand," she said, sitting next to the young man who had risked his job for her. "Why did you do that? You didn't even know me." Cameron smiled. "My sister came back from Afghanistan with scars too, not as visible as yours. She never talked about it, but I saw the signs. When you entered the restaurant, I noticed the way you carried yourself, how you turned your damaged face toward people instead of hiding it. It was the opposite of what my sister did." He paused. A few weeks after that dinner, she saw her interview on the news. The next day, she finally agreed to seek help for her PTSD. Melissa nodded, speechless. "So, in fact, I should be thanking you," he continued. I think you saved my sister that night in a way you couldn't even imagine. Melissa looked around at the transformed parking lot, at the veterans and their families sharing a meal under the stars, at David animatedly talking with a group of volunteer doctors. It was strange to think that it had all started with an act of cruelty, transformed by solidarity into something so much greater. You know what I realize now, she finally said. Everywhere there are two types of people, those who notice the face when they see our scars, and those who understand that it's our scars that truly matter. Cameron raised his glass to the scars that matter. All around, dozens of other glasses were raised in response. Some wounds don't fade with time, they're left there to remind us of battles fought with pride and moments when we nearly died. Not all heroes wear their medals, some just wear their pain, standing tall through the storm and rain. These scars that matter, tell the story that I carry. These scars that matter, show the weight that I've been bearing. Not every battle leaves a ribbon, not every fight makes the news. But these scars that matter, they're the proof of what we've been through. Then strangers stood beside me, brothers and sisters in arms. Turned shame to something mighty, a beacon shining through the dark. Found purpose in the broken places, found family in the pain. Found strength I never knew would remain. And maybe beauty isn't perfect skin. Maybe courage is the light within. Standing proud with your head held high. When the world wants you to hide. These scars that matter, tell the story that we carry. These scars that matter, show the weight that we've been bearing. Not every battle leaves a ribbon, not every fight makes the news. But these scars that matter, they're the truth we're living through. These scars that matter, they're the best of who we are. Some see broken, I see brave. Some see damaged, I see saved. These scars that matter, they're who we are.